itself, happens every year. We think we've blacked it out. It's still there. So find another mechanism, no Sharpie markers. So what I have done in the past and what KDE recommends is that you use some type of Xing or blanks, or use your cursor and do a highlight with the color black. Okay, that's the best way if you're covering up something completely. I have a theory about black electrical tape, but that's just my theory. Black it out with highlighting is the best way to go. Now back to where we just were for a moment. Those key terms. Blinding is the process of removing any personal identifying information. Non-responsive means an application that is ineligible for funding due to an error. So if you do not blind it correctly, that would be deemed an error, and your application would be non-responsive. Okay, so this is also repeated on page 51, talks about it almost identically here. Now I want to give you a history lesson. KDE has gone kind of back and forth, and this is the grants branch. It's, you know, some of the programs have gone back and forth on whether we're doing it this way or not, and the line has been drawn this year as of October 1st, going forward until it stops. We will be penalized if we don't blind appropriately. Back, 2-3 years ago, when we had the Read to Achieve and the math grants, you may recall those hundreds of grant proposals were received. And on both of those competitions, any of the grants that were not blinded appropriately were deemed non-responsive. The first, I want to say the first grant was the Read to Achieve. And 25 to 30% of those grants were not funded because they did not blind appropriately. I was there. It was painful, but that was the rule. And KDE stuck to it. So, okay, so 25 to 30% were not eligible for funding just because they didn't follow a rule. A few weeks later, maybe a few months later, the math grants were due, and it was a little better. It was 10 to 15% of the proposals that were not blinded appropriately that were thrown out. Why am I stressing this? Because in most cases, the error occurred in one of the attachments or in a budget or on the cover page. Okay. Now, it's easy to search your narrative 30 pages and find the word school or elementary or the name of your school or the name of your superintendent. It's easy to find that and black it out. What's not easy is when the finance department has done your budget for you and they send it to you in a PDF to attach, and you just attach it, and right there, smack dab in the top, is the name of your school. Okay. So I'm stressing that because it's not just the narrative. It's every single page of your proposal should be blinded or not include information that would tell someone who you are. Now, this is to protect you and to protect the readers, to keep any bias out of that, right? Because you may get somebody from Murray State who loves WKU, and maybe you think badly of them because they go to Murray State. I don't know.
Hey,
yes,
Jonna. Vicki Dansbury made a good point. You might want to read that in the comments.
Will do. Vicki Dansbury always makes good points. I just want to say that. All right. So Vicki said, I had a great one not funded due to a transposed school name in one place. And nobody. So it happens. I'm telling you, it happens.
She's saying that search and replace did not catch it.
Yep.
So.
Yep. You just, there's no way for me to, and this is another great, most of us that do this for a living, we don't like other people reading our stuff. We're very sensitive about that. But I will tell you that when I submit a proposal, it's been read by no fewer than 4 people. Why? Because I never catch all my own typos. I never catch things that should be caught. For an example, the other day we were working on a grant, and I capitalized the word white as in color, just like black is capitalized black for black students, and white. I thought, okay, white is going to. I've had this discussion with people. Sure enough, the client I was working with sent me the style book that said no, white is still lowercase. Who knew, right? Now, is that really what we're saying? No, that's not the big deal, because not everybody knows that. But I don't catch my own mistakes. You will not catch your own errors either. And Vicki has pointed out a very good one. The search did not catch that. So you can't just do a copy and replace. You've got to have people reading it and reading it to find things, not just reading it to say, oh, honey, you did a good job. No, I hate when people tell me that. I want real feedback. I want them to tell me what's strong and what's not strong. So yes, do a search for names, then check and recheck the documents. Is there something in the budget? Is there something in a co-applicant agreement? Is there something in a partner agreement or private school page? Something. Check every single page before you submit. Okay. Our reviewers, and I've been doing the review training as well as the grant writer training, this training today, I will tell you it's highly distracting for the readers when they suddenly come upon something that has your name in it, because they have to report it. And now, if they come upon it, they're going to have to tell, and maybe it's not even read. That'll be determined. We'll see what happens as we go forward, but it is a killer. It is a killer, and it's crazy. Do you want to spend 150 hours or so writing and submitting this proposal only for one word to cause it to be thrown out? Yeah. So I'm gonna beat that up a little bit. All right. So be careful with that. Every single page, check it. All right. Okay. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about some of the crazy stuff. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just a lot of stuff in terms of what the order of your proposal. Now, this is often one of the first things I do when I get an RFA. You get this big set of documents and you go, oh my goodness, what does that mean? Well, and in fact, I had a call at lunch on another grant. We talked about some of that. You look through to see what is the order, what goes where, so that when you were pushed that last week, you get it all correct. Right now, not all of the attachments are for every person, so or for every district. So here's what I want you to do. You have 2 lists, and as best I can tell, they match up. We've really worked this year on this. Okay, page 37 and page 49, and in a minute, in fact, I'll go ahead and show you. All right. So if you put together, and on the left side of your screen is page 37. And on the right side of your screen is page 49. This is the order in which you are supposed to submit your proposal. Now you see all of these things. Now I'm going to take a second, and I'm going to try to scroll in a little bit. Let's see if I can do that. Yep. Go back. And how about that? Sort of. There we go. All right. So I've scrolled in. You should be able to see the top half of the list right now. And I'm just using the one off of page 37 for now, but it should be the same on page 49. And you get points for these. Okay, you should get all the points you're entitled to on this. Application cover is page 1. Remember where that is? We looked at that earlier. The assurance documents. In fact, these go from front to back. So, well, sort of. Page, looking for my cover. Page 52 is your cover page. All right, and I have a suggestion for you. Go to page 52. Okay, give you a second for that. And what I've done with mine is at the top of every single page, I've written who has to do those pages, whether it's everybody or maybe not everybody. Almost every page you have to do. But we'll start with that. Page 52, the cover page. Everybody does the cover page. This page will be amended to include the December 10th date. Okay, and you must check one of the 4 boxes across the top. This is also the page that you notarize and you sign. Page 53, 54, and 55, and 56. These are the assurances. Everybody fills out the assurances, and the blank lines that are there are for initials of whoever's signing it. Okay, so it's not as simple as just signing. We need initials too. Page 54, excuse me, 57, 58, 59, 60, and 60, excuse me, 57 and 58 are 2 pages of the logic model. You could have up to 4 pages for that logic model, right? That comes after the table of contents that you create. So you have an application cover page. You have your assurance documents with the initials and the signatures, and you create a table of contents for your proposal. Then you have your logic model. Could be 1, 2, 3, or 4 pages. Then you start with the narrative, not to exceed 30 pages. And the narrative is page 1. Okay, so the first page of the narrative is page 1. Now, a word about that. What if you write 35 pages? The reviewers will be told not to read anything beyond the 30 pages. Okay? The 30 pages will not be read. So you might as well get it in the 30 pages because they're not going to see it. I'll remind you that everybody gets the same amount of space, so there's no use whining about it. Okay? After the narrative, page 31 would be your reference page. And that's a document you're also going to create yourself. Okay. Next up will be, make sure I got this right. Oh, piddle. Hang on, I got to look at something. I'm just going to go with it. Next page is number 61 for your budget summary. We'll look at that this afternoon when we look at budgets. There's a summary page. Then you have your budget narrative, which is really written in a chart form. And you're going to write a set of budget narrative for year 1, another set for year 2, another set for year 3. Then you have one page, it's called the budget page. And this is simply where you're filling in the amount of funding you're requesting. Page 64 is the prior grantee history. This is for continuation and expansion grants that build on a continuation. Okay, so this is if you have a grant right now or you've had one in the past, this is your page, page 64. Okay. Now the new applicant, page 65, has an amendment coming. Okay. All new applicants will fill out this sheet. There will now be a section at the top which asks you if you are a new applicant that has currently something operating, you already have an after-school program, or if you are a new applicant that does not have. You'll have a yes or no box. If your answer is yes, you'll fill out the other. If it's no, you won't. Okay, so the instructions should be fairly straightforward, but you would get credit just by checking the box on that. The next page, page 66, is for nonprofits or non-governmental agencies to tell about their capacity. It's them attaching their 501c3 forms, all of that. Okay. Next, you are going to have a list of consortium partners. Okay, that's just a list of all the folks you're going to be working with on your grant. You create that list yourself. The next page is another page you're going to create yourself. It's a chart listing the positions, qualifications, and program responsibilities of your staff, and that's not to exceed 2 pages. The next page is the equitable access page. It's GEPA, and it's not to exceed 1 page, and it's a page you write. Your finance department can help you with that. And it just says basically, if you have, for example, students who speak a language other than English at home, what will you do in your center to make sure that they are receiving the program supports they need to? Okay. Next up is the signed certifications regarding lobbying, etc. That's page 59 and 60 in your forms. And you just get that signed. Then you're going to have page 67, which is your program summary. Everybody does that. Page 68, same thing. They're going to finish. You're going to do that. Page 69 is your school summary. Everybody does that. On page 70, that's your schedule. Go back page. Go back page. Okay, so you have program summary. Okay, so the program schedule form that's over on page 70 actually goes before the summary, the two summary documents. So make sure you get it what it says, not what I say, what it says. School summary, your signed co-applicant agreement. So page 71 is the co-applicant, the spouse of your project. If you're a district, that co-applicant is someone in your area who is providing significant support for your project. It may be an industry, it may be a nonprofit, it may be a college or university, but it's someone who's providing you significant support related to what your students need. Then you're going to have from page 72, if you are a school district applying, you may have one agreement with other school-minded organizations, such as your Frisky, your PTO. Maybe you have a, I don't know, the Beta Club. Maybe they're going to be providing services to you, and you have them as a district partner. So you would group all of those together as one set of partners. Then you're going to use pages 73 forward to have your community partners. Now, most folks will have a district and 4, or you may just have 5 community partners, at least. That's a minimum. And they will all complete this and sign it. And then that last page is a private school consultation form, and you will make sure that is completed by your home schools or by your actual schools as you go through. Now on this one, I know that KDE has allowed there just to be email attached to that if as needed for a single principal. This should not be 100 pages. Okay, so try to address that as best you can without being 100 pages. All right. Okay. So that's the order. Okay, and it's really important to your reader to get that in the right order, because they're looking for certain things to fall in a certain place, and you don't want to make it harder for them than it already is. Okay, so you want to make sure you make this in advance. And what I do is I figure out what kind of proposal I am. I figure out which attachments are supposed to be there, and I put them in order. I make up a dummy copy of this that I keep around my desk. And as I complete one of the forms, I stick a copy of that in there and take the sheet out that was holding its place. I'm very tactical that way, and I just need to see it. All right. So back on pages 37 through 39. All right, so let's talk a little about the formatting. Now, every year we possible, so here's pretty simple, I think. You have the order at the top of the page. To the bottom of the page, you've got formatting requirements. It must be double spaced, 8.5 by 11 letter size, 12-point Arial font, not Arial narrow, Arial. Okay. 1-inch side margins and a 1/2-inch top and bottom. So you get a little extra space there. A 30-page maximum for your narrative. You may have 1 extra page for that reference sheet. Remember that. But if anything over the 30 pages besides the reference sheet, it will not be read. Number the pages consecutively beginning with page 1 of the narrative. If you have text or if you have charts or graphs, tables, those kinds of things, they can be single spaced and 10 point, but not everything is a table. Not everything should be in a graph. There was lots of thought this year about whether some grantees should be penalized if they overdid the single spacing through tables. And I will tell you, there was a lot of discussion about that during last year's review. The number one rule of grant writing is not to piss off the reader. Just going to tell you. If they get mad at you because every page is a page full of single space 10 point table, I'm just saying, it's hard to be friendly to someone who's taking a little bit of advantage of the rules. So use it sparingly, or use it when it's necessary. It's not always necessary. Okay. No, making my plea for my reviewers here. Bullets may also be single spaced, but you hold those at 12 point. Okay. And here's the thing I was looking for. Charts may not comprise more than 50% of the total narrative. And we had a proposal like that last year. It was not a happy thing. Okay, so be aware of that. All right, and the reference page may be single spaced and 10 points, so you can get all of that in there. The last 3 bullets at the bottom of page 37 actually talks about those additional types of forms that were not for school districts, but those are inside your list. On page 38, it talks about student records and how we're going to keep those confidential, what you're going to have for that, your records retention, carryover funds, and how that's dealt with, etc. All right. Let's see. Closeout, equipment, and surplus. We're not going to talk about page 39 at all. You need to read it. Now, here's my suggestion. Looking at page 40 and thinking about the time when you are going to submit this grant as we go forward and start looking at the evaluation criteria. The deadline is December 10th. We've talked about that. But the application cannot be hand delivered. It cannot be emailed. It must arrive at the facility by 4 p.m. on December 10th Eastern time. Therefore, you should use a delivery service or mail it a week ahead, which I wouldn't do. I'd use a delivery service. In fact, I've been known to send it the more expensive route so that it's received by 10 or 11 in the morning, and that way I can relax the rest of the day. It's well worth the cost of that for me. All right, check back over here as we get going. Make sure I don't have anything else new. Okay, so the question from Michael is, if you're applying as a new applicant for a school but operate as separate, you would be a new applicant. Each application, if you're a new applicant for a new school that's never been served, you do everything as a new applicant. Okay? You would not fill out any of the other forms based on your other existing sites. Okay. Okay, so Sharon says, I'm still unclear on how to properly blind a co-applicant that identifies it serves in by its name. So, for example, if it was Warren County Baptist Church, you would black out the word Warren, okay, and it would just be blank County Baptist Church. Okay. Some places identify themselves more easily than others. For example, if I said the Corvette plant, or if I said the Ford plant, people might know where those are, but those do serve big areas. I might say instead a major car manufacturer. Okay, we have, I think, 3 now in the state. So you do the best you can, unless it's blatant. Then the tie will go to the runner, as they say in baseball. All right. So the evaluation criteria. Why are they there? Well, the evaluation criteria on page 41 is an outline that helps your proposal match up to everybody else's proposal so that the readers can see apples to apples. Okay. So let's take a look at page 55 and see why or how these get reviewed, these evaluation criteria. Okay, so page 55. And you'll see on page 55 a lot of small writing. Okay. We're really looking at item 29 on page 55, and I'm going to pop it up on your screen. And it says there, the second paragraph in number 29, the KDE follows a two-step process for reviewing and awarding applications. Employees of KDE who are familiar with the programs and activities under blah, 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 review all the applications for completeness. The KDE selects peer reviewers to review and rate the applications based on established scoring rubrics. What is a scoring rubric? Award decisions are made by a peer review committee based on the scoring rubric and the merit of each application. The grants branch role is to facilitate the review process. And further down in red, peer reviewers are non-KDE employees and are recruited based on background and expertise in providing effective academic, enrichment, youth development, and related services to children. Now, when you sign these assurances, or when your principal or superintendent, when they're signing, you're agreeing to this process. And basically that means that you're okay having someone else review your proposal using the evaluation criteria as a scoring rubric to score your proposal. All right, so I wanted to add that because I want you to see that this isn't just something that sounds good. It's a requirement. This is not something that was just thought. It's the way it's been done, federally and at the state level. So your audience for writing your proposal is not KDE. Okay, you remember seeing that in the text? KDE does not review this. Your audience is actually a set of peer reviewers. I used to have a set of folks I work with, and one of them would always come to me, Jonna, we need to put in a sentence about this because KDE loves this. And I would just say, no, KDE's not reading this. I don't have to convince KDE. I have to convince 3 random people who work in education. So I don't need to, and I don't like using this term, but I don't need to suck up to KDE using KDE's language. I need to create a high quality program design based on the needs of my students that anybody could read and see and agree with. Okay, that's what I need to do. So I want to ask you, and in the chat, if you'll let me know, how many of you have ever participated in a grant review process? Yes or no? Have you been a grant reader? In the chat, yes or no? Okay, and as we look at that, lots of guesses, some no's. I will tell you, those of you who have not done this before, you should. You'll learn a whole lot. Yes, Geneva, it's hard work. It is really hard work. It's hard work, but you learn a lot while you're doing it. Okay, so also if you're interested in learning, the Kentucky Comprehensive Literacy Program has that RFP for reviewers out, the call for reviewers. So it might be something you'd want to do. Don't know. I've reviewed many times, and I learn something every time. I want you to answer one of these others. You can pick one. How many By percentage of them were, for those of you who've read before, were easy to read, were average, or were amazing. Okay, so those of you who've read before, most of them easy to read, are most of them amazing? Give me some feedback on that. What have you learned from your time reviewing grant proposals? In the chat. Easy to read, some amazing, most were okay. Yep. Yep, most were okay. Amazing, 5%. I would give it a little more than 5, but yeah, that's about right. Easy, 35%. Average, okay, 60%. Amazing, 5% from Vicki. Yeah, I'm telling you. Now, I will tell you that, you know, the bell curve exists for a reason. As my mother always told me, I'm at least as good as half the people in the room. So that is, most of the proposals are average. They're okay. You know, they answer most of the questions. Some of them they answer really, really well, but only a few are amazing. And every time I'm working with reviewers to talk to them about their proposals, the ones they read, the ones that we've all submitted, they say, well, yeah, I had one that was okay. And at lunch, they'll come back in and I'll go, how many of you had one that was amazing? And one table will raise their hand. Okay. And the difference between okay and amazing is that the amazing one is clear. It has limited fluffiness. Okay? It doesn't have extra sentences or extra words. It doesn't have long sentences. It's just clear. Our kids are suffering from this, so we will do this. It's just clear. So when you see a winning proposal, when you look at one, you can tell, oh, I see the difference now. And we'll look at some examples of that. But I wanted to get some feedback from folks who've read before. You know, it's just like when you were in history class. Okay, you had to write a paper. Most of them were B's and C's. You had a few that popped up in the A's. That's normal. And that works that same way in grants. So having a clean, clear, detailed proposal will help you be in the correct position on that bell curve. Okay. So your peer reviewers, who are they then? If they're so important, and let's remember, anytime you write something, it is to someone, right? It's to an audience. If I were to write a grocery list to my husband and I needed him to pick up balsamic vinegar, I would be very clear to say to him, balsamic vinegar is on the vinegar row with the vinegar. It is not salad dressing. It is balsamic vinegar. It comes in a little bottle and it's brown. If I was to write that same grocery list for my daughter, I would just say, I need some balsamic vinegar. I'd get it, right? If I were to, I could do the same thing. There's a discussion going on in my friends group about pure vanilla. Okay. I've told many a person, never buy imitation vanilla, always buy pure. You pay more, but you got to buy the pure. Well, if I put vanilla on the list, my daughter knows that. My husband does not. I would get the cheap stuff and it would be terrible. So to whoever's reading your work, you address them in the way they need to be addressed. So who are you addressing? Well, KDE, the grants management branch, not 21st Century, grants management will choose probably 35 to 40 people to do the review. It depends on how many grants they receive. And then they'll team those reviewers up in groups of 3. Now, much of the time, this will be based on who they are. For example, if you have a retired principal, that retired principal is likely not going to be paired up with another principal and another superintendent. They'll be paired up with practitioners from a 21st Century program. Okay, sometimes they'll get somebody like me or like Vicki or Susan, who are actually doing the review, and we will be one of the extras. Okay, so you might get on a panel a 21st Century program director, a school principal, and a grant person. Okay, so a mix. Also, they will try to avoid giving grant proposals to review to people who are from a specific region. I said that really awful. Let me try again. Okay, if the proposal is from Jefferson County, they're not likely to give it to a review panel that's all from Jefferson County. They're going to give it to somebody from another area in the state. So a lot of that goes on, trying to make sure everybody's got a little bit of not closeness, being kind of removed from that. Each of the people will read 10 to 12 proposals. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so you have all these attachments at the front. You have 30 pages of narrative plus that one page, and then all those other attachments, 3 years of budgets. I'm pretty sure your application is going to be more than 75 pages. Okay? I don't know if you can see my notebook, but that's a lot to be reading. Okay? Every proposal is going to be as big as this RFA, and they're going to have to read 10 or 12 of them in a matter of a few days. It's heavy lifting and it's hard, and they'll use that. They'll use page 41 through 50 as their guide for scoring that. So it's not just to read like a book. They're looking for that specific information. Each reviewer will make comments based on whether all of the information is there or if something were missing. Okay, if there's some information that's just not quite there. Now, if you'll look at your reviewers listing, let's go to page 42. So page 42, the first bullet, which is about it within the project design, the first bullet gets you 3 points, and it says increased academic achievement of participating students in math, reading, and science. So let's say that in your response, you answer math and reading very well, but you don't say anything about science. Well, they may take a point away. You don't get 3 full points for that. You get 1 or 2 points, and they'll comment about what it was that was missing. I could not find information on academic improvement in science. Okay, so they're going through that reading using this rubric as a guide. Yeah, okay.
Jonna, can I say something?
Yes, ma'am. You may.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify for the performance goals that we are doing an amendment for this section to say that, okay, you have to identify these 6 goals in your logic model. And then we're going to add that we want you to describe the activities and services that you're going to use to address these performance goals.
So that would go on page, on page 42?
Yes.
Okay.
And that will be included in the amended RFA.
Okay. So that adds a little extra weight to that. Okay. So if you guys make a note of that, it's going to be a little different there on page 42. All right, thank you. Now the peer reviewers, again, KDE does not score it, but the peer reviewers meet as a team, and they may change a score between them. And let me give you an example. Once I've read 5 or 6 of these, my brain capacity might go down a little bit, right? And so I might not see an answer to something that my buddy Susie does. And Susie may say, oh, but Jonna, I found it right here on page 18. I can then go to page 18 and go, oh, man, I totally took away points for that. I'm going to add those points back. So having the 3 reviewers is to help them to be as correct as possible within a very short amount of time. Now, the reviewer, and this is so very important, the reviewer may not be familiar with 21st century learning. And I want you to think about a school principal in a school that never had a 21st century program. Do they know what it looks like, what it sounds like when the bell rings? Do they know the energy level that's there? They might not. Do they know the level of learning? They might not. So when you write the proposal, I always call it the grandma test. You should write it so that it's so clear, even your grandmother could understand what this looks like once it's done. In fact, your proposal is really your plan for operating your community center. So you need to think about that very literally. If something happens to me after I write a grant, if I'm hit by a bus, somebody should be able to pick up my grant and go operate it. That's how clear this should be. It also should be written in order, and I cannot stress how important that is. Okay. For example, let's look at page 43. Go to page 43 and let's just look at some of the bullets. All right, let's look at linkage to the regular school day. There are 3 bullets there. And you know, I could just write paragraphs and you could try to find that information, but a much better way is to keep the bullets in this order and write to each bullet. Okay, again, some people say, but it just reads so bumpy that way. Writing a grant is not a novel. It is not supposed to be this smooth, elegant type of text. No, it's supposed to answer the technical questions that you've been asked. Okay, it does not necessarily have to flow from one place to another. It's nice if it does from time to time, but basically you're answering these open response questions and you're writing those responses in full. Okay. So keep it in order, be clear. Try to avoid talking about your beliefs. We believe that all children deserve the best. Well, okay, fine. That doesn't help. I think most people would say that, right? So I don't think that's necessary. Rather than putting your beliefs out there, why not just say what you're going to do and why? It's not based on opinion, and you shouldn't be whining. Okay. This is a point where if we were in person, I would say, how many of you have had a budget cut in the last 5 years? Okay, so don't whine about your budget cut. That's not what a grant proposal is about. You are not begging for money to do something. You are proposing an awesome, amazing, innovative solution for kids, period. It's not about they just struggle so much because they're so poor. You know, they're just so poor. No. You identify who they are and you target their needs based on evidence of what might work. Okay. Be Nike, just do it. Don't whine about it. Don't try to convince me by saying we believe this will work. No, show me the evidence that it will. Okay. Details and facts. So here's a not so good example of what I'm talking about. All of our students go home to an empty house. These precious children have no one to help them with homework or fix them a snack or keep them safe. This is a problem that cannot continue to exist. Well, okay, if you say so. I have no idea what you're going to do. It's a little fluffy, but let's see if we can see a little better example of this that keeps some personality, but not so much fluff. Our 328 students attend our elementary school each day. Unfortunately, 58% of them go home each afternoon to an empty house. Okay, the other one said all of them. I don't believe that. All of your kids can't go home to an empty house. Middle of the graph. They have no one to help them with homework or fix them a snack or keep them safe. See, I kept some of the fluff. Nearly all of these students are from low-income homes and do not meet proficiency on state math and literacy requirements. Okay. I'm not whining. I'm just putting some data out there to say how bad is it? And that's something I love to just shout at people. How bad is it? Don't whine about how bad it is. Show me. Show me how bad it is. Okay. Another not so good example. Our project staff will work with teachers to recruit students to the project. They will include ongoing discussions about the needs of students and families in our school, as well as teachers' beliefs regarding students in need of services. That's not horrible. You know, if we were talking about how we're going to recruit and retain kids, which is a specific, criterion you have to answer, that's not horrible. That's average. Okay, remember our bell curve, that's average. So let's look at one that's better. We will work with teachers in monthly meetings. How often? Not ongoing, monthly, to target students most in need of services. Specific recruitment groups will include students who exhibit one or more of the following. How bad is it? At least 1 year behind in math or reading. Students with more than 3 behavioral referrals. Students who are chronically absent. Students who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. Okay, do you see the difference there? I'm going to go back to the first one. That's not horrible. Okay, take a second to read that. And then look at the better one. And I'm going to add a little emphasis for you. Okay. Just a little detail takes that from being, let's meet in a committee and make some decisions, to bam, we now have a recruitment group that's going to work with teachers to target these 4 specific groups to prioritize who should be attending our after school. If you write a paragraph and it feels like you didn't say anything, you didn't say anything, okay? So take a step back and see if you can figure out a way to say something more specific. All right. So your proposal narrative, back on page 49 again. Not that I was getting a little antsy at myself. Okay. I was going, why am I looking at page 49? Okay, so again, the narrative fits in your list of attachments, right? So you've got the cover, the assurances, your table of contents, the logic form, and then 30 pages, up to 30 pages of your narrative. So when we talk a little bit as we go from here on about how do we actually write that so that people can find the information, right? Oh, yeah. So your page numbering starts there on page 1 of the narrative. Now, the narrative order is from page 41 to page 50-ish, okay? You're actually not going to write anything on page 50. That's the priorities. So you're not actually going to cover anything, but it's part of the criteria. And each one of these bullets is worth points, okay? Now I put a beware in here, so beware. These are different from previous years. If you write, just take your last year's or the year before's or 5 years ago's proposal and you just brush it off and submit it, it's not likely to score well. Okay, for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's not in order. There will be things missing. You will not get points for that. And number 2, it will be hard for the reviewer to read because they'll be bouncing all over the place looking for your answers, because they have to do that. They have to try to find your answers. It's not a fun place to be. So the criteria are different, and the criteria are worth different points values than in previous years. So let's take a look at that. And I'm going to show you a chart that I kind of use to help me think through the specifics of writing a proposal. Okay, each section is worth a certain number of points. Need is worth 30. Project design and operations are worth the most points, 88 and 33. And these are going to be changed a little bit with the new amendment that's coming up, but the bulk of it is the same. Okay. So the reason I do this is that I want to think about which section in the grant should have the most pages. Okay. Now I'm going to start for the moment with the budget. Okay. The budget, based on points, might ought to be 27. It is 27 points. And that's going to end up being as many pages as the need section. You see how they're close in points? But fast forward with me, if you will, to page 48. Okay, on page 48, 2 of these bullets actually just say to attach your budgets. Literally, that will take me 2 or 3 lines in my proposal. So this next little column is not really accurate because I didn't take that into account. Okay, so now I've got a couple of pages extra I can add. That may have sounded confusing. Let me say it again. When you're writing to the budget narrative, remember that I said this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet points on page 48, you need to write a response in the narrative in those 30 pages that relates back, that answers these 6. The second and third bullet basically say, did you attach those things? I would put my responses, budget summary form is attached, and budget narratives for your 1, 2, and 3 are attached. I'm not going to write a bunch about them. I'm just going to say they're attached. But the rest I'm going to write to. So it's probably going to be a couple of pages. Now, you'll see what I did here is just some low-level math. I said, okay, if a section is worth 30 points and we have, I don't know, 8,000 points, 313 points when this was finished last, how many pages is that? Well, the first thing I did was I took off the 46 points because they don't take up any of my 30 pages. I'm not going to count that against it. Okay? So when I start thinking about the numbers of pages then for my 30 pages, this is what I'm looking at. Those 2 big sections are going to be 9 to 10 pages each. Is that a rule? Heck no. Let me be clear. Is that a rule? Heck no. You know, I can't really do that way. I only do it one direction. Anyway, it's not a rule. It's just a suggestion from me. When I work with a group, I don't want to go to my friend Susie and say, hey, Susie, can you write the partner section? And the partner section is going to be about 2 pages, but I forget to tell Susie that, and Susie writes 8 pages for me. Oh, no. Now, here's another suggestion I will make to you. Don't worry too much about the pages until you get it all done. I have this highfalutin device. Let me see if I've got one over here. Yep, I do. It's called a Post-it note. So when I'm writing, and I've been doing this a long time, but I get nervous about how many pages I'm writing. It's too long, it's too long, it's too long, it's too long. It's always too long. You're going to go back and edit. You're going to cut. You're going to move some things around. It'll be fun. If you get anxious, take this little Post-it note and take it and put it over on that little corner where your pages are being counted so you can't see it. Word. It helps. It keeps my anxiety level low. Okay, so this is just an estimate of how many pages you might have, okay, to help you know as you're going forward. So your proposal narrative, this is where you have this one job, and that is to clearly communicate. Okay. And I do see a couple of questions. We'll grab those in a second. Okay. You have one job to communicate. I can't tell you the number of times that I have had in a proposal. I got my reviews back and they said, we could not find the answer to XYZ. And I go, but it's right there on page 18. Maybe that was the problem. It was on page 18. Maybe it should have been on page 13. Maybe I should have had a flashing neon sign in my proposal to say, here's this point. Whatever it is they didn't find, that goes back to me. It should have been obvious there. Okay? I need to clearly communicate it. I need to get information to them, not fluff. I need to make sure they can find the information, and I need to make it as easy to read as possible. And that is, I'm not going to jam it all together. There's a reason, if you look at websites these days, websites are very sparse. They have pretty pictures and colors and very few words. Why? Because we don't like to read. So why in the world would you make someone read your proposal single spaced in a table and nothing but tables and tables and tables and tables, right? It's hard to read. If you want somebody to read something, you have to make it easy to read. Now, I'm going to spare you a recent article that a national colleague of mine wrote about white space and how it is your friend in a grant proposal because it relaxes your reader. They don't just see text and text and text and text. Okay, so be careful of that. Make it easier for them to read. And let me give you another tip. Many of our good proposals use a numbering system. Now, these are from previous years, so they don't match up to stuff that you're looking at. But for example, this particular one said, okay, part 1 is the need section. So the first bullet is bullet 1. So that little section is 1.1. And they took a little bit of the bullet text and made it a header. Okay. Very similarly, this one started it off a little different format, but the same principle, 3.9, and there's their little section on that. We have another one very similar to that. Do you have to? No, you don't. What you do have to do is make it easy to read. So for example, graded an essay, right? Think about that. You graded an essay. And it goes on and on and on and on. And you said in that essay in your prompt, you said, please be sure to include X and Y and Z. And you have to search for X and Y and Z, right? Not fun. So what we say in the grants profession is, let's outline each of those things so you can quickly go to that and say, yes, they answered this thoroughly. It's done. Well done. Okay, next point. All right. If it's just written flow and you go 5 pages without some kind of outline, it's hard to read or to score at least. Now I want you to turn to section 3 in the we're going to look on page 44 in the criteria, because this is actually these criteria are a little hard to number because you have multiple headers and multiple bullets. So look in the middle of page 44 and you'll see what I mean. You see there that it says part 3, program operations, maximum points. But then it says minimum operations. Okay. And there are 3 bullets with some sub bullets. So I made this one up and I don't really like it, but it's just a suggestion. So the minimum operations, to demonstrate how we will meet the required minimum operations, we have included 3.1A. Or excuse me, 3.1A. And I did that because you have 3 bullets and I just went ABC. I don't really like that. And hang on a minute, I'll show you the difference. So you got 3.1A, 3.1B, 3.1C. And it answers those 3 things through the timeline. I'm going to that. So I said, we have included A detailed timeline found below, table 4. B, operations from July 1, 2021 to September 30, 2022. And C, key indicators marked by an asterisk. So in my table, I'm going to mark each of these bullets here with an asterisk that include the start and end times. Now, I could, and in fact, I think I will. I think I am. Hang on. I could, instead of having 3.1.8, I could have just left it as A, B, and C. I could have just used bullets. I think bullets would be the simplest. But as long as I have this header there, my reviewer will be able to find that section. And that's what's critical. What are they writing about? Okay. Is it in order? Does it make sense? All right, so I hope that helped a little bit. Our favorite part of the program, checking our time. I'm being facetious. This is not our favorite part of the program, but here we go. We're going to do a partial review of the criteria. We're just going to hop through some of them to give you an idea of how to write a fully developed one. I'm just going to go through a few of them. We're on page 41. And some of them we kind of looked at as we went through. I'm going to look at the needs assessment, page 41, and I want you to look at, let's look at bullet 2. Okay, so bullet 2, describes how all stakeholders were included in the planning and development of the proposal. Well, crud. That's a hard one to ask right off the bat. Have you talked to people about your proposal? You're going to have to answer that, and it's 3 points. Have you talked to your stakeholders? Who are your stakeholders? We'll get to advisory council in a minute, but who are your stakeholders? I don't know. You'll have to describe that. Describe the target population, address a minimum of 5 of those. Now earlier, and I think it was Michael who said, can you use zip code for that? Can you use it? Absolutely. You can use anything you choose to use, and any relevant sources. Try not to use People magazine, for example, but relevant sources that are timely, you can use that. And you can use other things. There may be something in your area. I'm looking at this. Homelessness is here. Chronic absenteeism is there. So there may be something that is specific to your area. I'm not seeing dyslexia. Dyslexia is a great one. We have some of our communities who have very high dyslexia rates. That might be something you add. Okay. Also, I'm not seeing rural. So rural might be a little bit something you want to mention. Just saying. Now I want to look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet. So right under all the bullets, describes methods and or instruments that were used to collect feedback from teachers, students, parents, and the community. So how did you get feedback from your folks, right? You mean we have to do that? No, you don't have to do it. But if you want those 3 points, you have to do it. I wonder why they make you do that. Because it's best practice. Because they want to make sure you talk to someone who might have some impact on children. They also ask you about private homes consultation form. Describe how students with special needs have access to the program. I'm going to take a breath there, and I'm going to look back at those questions because I know one of them had to do with one of the things I just said. Let's see. Okay, good. Questions. Do you know how many grants will be awarded? No, Kristen, and I do not. Yeah. Typically, in a given year, it's 20 to 30. And it depends on the year. It depends on how much funding is there. So I do not know. For those of you who are looking forward and saying, gee, I hope the 21st century program survives the new administration. If everything, I don't want to get political here, but let's say the new administrator is a new administration, how would it affect it? The Democratic Party tends to like this program. It was created during a Democratic era. I would not be worried. I think it'll continue to be funded, but I don't know how many exactly. Question for private homeschool form. Would we provide services to any private or homeschool in the district, or only those within the district zoned area of our school? Great question. Last year, what we said was it would be limited to the zoned area of your school. Okay. I think that's what we said. And if not, Bridget is going to correct me and put it in the FAQ. Would it be for any student in the grade range served by the grant, or only students that would be zoned to our school if they attended public schools? I believe it's to students who are attending your schools within that grade range. You would not be expected to serve an 8th grader who is in an elementary school grant, or vice versa. Under staffing on part 3 program operations, page 44, the second bullet says provides a staffing chart listing positions, qualifications, and program responsibilities. I know we will have that chart in the required attachments. Do we have to include it again in the narrative, or can we just reference the attachment? Okay, Laura, thank you for asking that question, because I get to give my favorite line of the day. Okay, you can do anything you'd like to, including set your pants on fire. Okay. If it asks for it in the narrative, I put it in the narrative. Okay, I would not reference it in the chart, in the other form. I might say, as noted in the other chart, we have this and this and this and this and this. I put it because, again, they have to read 12 of these suckers. We have spent the day driving ourselves crazy, flipping back and forth. Does that make it easy on your reviewer? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make it easy at all. So you want them to be able to read your narrative as easily as possible. Include it where it's asked for, and if it seems a repetition, then it needs to be that. Todd asks, will the reviewers be instructed to deduct points for research that is not current? Not the center profile data here. If so, what is considered current or timely? There has never been, to my knowledge, any described deducting of points for old research. Now, if a reviewer decided to do that, and we can talk to them about the research, of course, there is no bar for that. For example, if I was going to talk about early learning, I would probably cite the Hart-Risley study, which is from, I don't know, 1990, 1991, which has not been refuted. And I would say that, and I would give additional sources, but I would also cite Hart-Risley. So, it really depends on how well you cite that. If they cite one source from 1954 and no other source, that would be more of an issue than one of the sources or one of the pieces of evidence not being as current as others.
Right. So, yeah, so you want to use the most current data that you have.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's for the data. For the research pieces too, you want to make sure that's as current as possible, but you can't always have, you can't, right. I mean,
right.
There's just some things we don't have. So do the best you can there. And so if I have an old piece of evidence, I will encouch that in why it's old, right? I'll explain that to the reader. But to answer your question, no, we will not. We will not really talk to them about that, I don't think. All right, so the logic model. Okay, so here's where you're going to want to pull up your logic model. I did not know that was on my screen. Hot diggity, there's a clock right there. All right, so on your logic model, which is part of your, let's see, page 57 and 58. And remember, you get up to 4 pages for this. And I am going to kind of show you a little bit of how I would do it in just a minute, but I want to talk about it first. The logic model has typically been kind of a cheat sheet, a summary of your whole project. It's something that your reader can come in, jump in, look at your logic model and go, oh, look at that, bam, bam. Okay, good. They're serving this community, this type of need. They've got this kind of activity going on without ever having to read the rest of your proposal. So it's a really great way to design your proposal. I have a friend who was on earlier, Miss Tara, who loves to use the logic model to design the work, right, to fill in the things. So we're going to go at it from that way. And it can be up to 4 pages. You may expand the cells or adjust them somewhat. I wouldn't go crazy. You don't want to do something really weird. Innovative is good. Weird is not. Don't do anything weird here. Okay. And again, the format's changed just a little bit from last year. You're going to list your goals, your performance goals. You're also going to, that's be the 6 goals that you might have. And then any others you want to have. You'll have performance indicators, and you'll see here under the column on the left, performance indicators, KDE has included that word objectives. So those of you who are as old as I am, that's typically the word we would use there. The reason we're using performance indicators is that's what the National uses. That's what they call them. We need to use their language. It's the way it is. All right, so we're going to describe our participants and then line up our columns. So where do you begin though? And I will tell you that I begin with the participants, okay? Because I can make up anything about anybody to do something, but it really should be about your kids, your students, and who they are. If you're not clear on that, you shouldn't even be submitting this proposal, okay? Because you're responsible for changing the lives, the academics, the behaviors, all kinds of things for these students and their families. So you better know who these students are, at least in terms of the characteristics of those populations. So I want you to just take a second and start jotting down some things you might know about your participants. You might want to put them in your logic model box. Okay? If you don't have a data source, that's okay. You can leave the numbers blank for now. For example, you can say high free and reduced rate lunch, high number of homeless, whatever it is. But make a little list of characteristics of your particular participants. All right, now that you've thought just for a minute about your specific participants, what do you want for them? So where do you want them to be at the end of a year for that, right? And you have to use those 6 goals. And if you'll recall, those 6 goals are listed in a couple of places. You'll find them on page 42 and also somewhere else. Page 15. No, just use 42. So page 42 and also on page 13. It lists what those must be. But for example, if you know, and if you wrote on one of your lines that you have second graders who are reading 2 levels below in literacy, then you have a very specific thing. Okay? We're going to increase the number of students performing below reading level by 35%. No, you know what I meant. We're going to bring them above. But you want to try to take those 6 goals and use them as part of your program in a way that's specific to your students instead of being bland. Okay, so let's look at the second one. Okay, the second goal is to improve non-cognitive indicators of success in participating students. Okay, that's a goal. That's big and broad. What does that mean for you? Is it behaviors? Is it leadership? Is it homework? There are probably 20 things you could put under non-cognitive indicators. What are the things that you think your students need to improve on? So everybody should look a little different, right? So let's take a moment to think about goals and objectives, or in this case, our performance goals and our performance indicators. So what is a goal? It is something broad. Every kid knows how to do math. Every kid can read. Every kid is safe in his learning, right? It's something big, and you may never even complete that, right? It's generally not specific. That is, it doesn't have a lot of data with it because it's too broad. You could have 2 or 3, or in this case, you're going to have 6. So again, looking at page 42, you see those 6 goals that you have to have. Now, your performance indicators or objectives, those go in the second box on your logic model, and they respond to those goals. You're supposed to have at least 3 under each of the 6 goals. Wow. Okay, so you can see that this page is going to kind of fill up, right? So it should include at least 3 under each 6, but before you do that, you kind of want to fill in some other things as well. What did I have there? I don't have a note there. What was I talking about? Okay, so examples. I'm confusing myself. Oh, here are some examples. I didn't do. Okay, close your eyes for a second, everybody. I got to find my spot. Okay, so before we fill it in, let's talk about what an objective is. Some days, right? All right, so we're and a performance indicator is looking at the change you hope to create. Okay, what do you hope to create? What is the change? So, for example, what does it look like now in mathematics? What do you hope it looks like later for that age group? Okay. So, what is it that you hope to achieve through that performance? And it's absolutely measurable. If it's not measurable, it is not a performance indicator. It is not an objective. It must be measurable. Now, I cheat, as many of you know. I use action words at the beginning of my sentence to help make me write it correctly. I use change words: increase, decrease, improved, that kind of thing. So here are just a few, that may or may not be any good, but just to help you think about that in terms of the increase and decrease. We're going to decrease the number of students who are at novice in 5th grade math by X% over the next 3 years. So another example, my performance goal is to look fabulous, and I have a time frame. By March 2021, I'm going to decrease my weight by 11%. Now, those of you who've been paying close attention over the years will notice that that number has gone up. Not good. I'm just saying. Did you know there's a pandemic? I'm thinking when the pandemic's gone, all my weight will just disappear, right? Is that the way I'm going with that? I'm going to increase the elasticity in my face by 19%. Okay, both are specific, both are measurable. I'm not sure either are realistic, but I'm trying, okay? So my activities, my strategies, the things I'm going to do to make that happen, I'm going to go to a gym, go on a diet, and see my Rodan and Fields agent. Okay? Those are things I'm going to do. When I'm measuring a change objective, I'm decreasing my weight. I am not counting the number of times I go to the gym. When I'm building leadership and camaraderie, I'm probably going to do a survey of my students to ask them about how they feel about their school and whether they feel a part of the group. I'm not going to count the number of times they play basketball. Okay. So for every activity, you may have some type of counting measure, and you may have some type of actual performance indicator that shows you things are changing. And we're hoping that you will use smart performance indicators, right? Which are specific, measurable, achievable. I've got relevant. I think the RFA says realistic, same, and a time frame for that. Why a time frame? Because if you don't put a time frame, it's not realistic or relevant, nor is it measurable. If I say to you that I'm going to decrease my weight by 11% and I never say by when, I'm right on track. I didn't put a time frame. It could be next decade. I'm thinking, All right, so your performance indicators should relate to your targeted population. And yes, we are coming up on break, so hang with me just another minute. So when we come back from our break, we are going to talk a little more and practice together in the logic model with, are you ready? Bears in the woods. It's bears in the woods. I'm excited. All right, so I'll see you back here at 2:40, where we will be starting on bears in the woods. All right, so take a 10-minute break. We'll be right back. Put your questions in the chat. I'll see if I can answer them while we're on break. Thank you, guys. One more minute. Okay, guys, we are back. I want to look at a couple of questions. You'll notice that that Jennifer has posted an answer on how to request a highly rated proposal from a previous year. You'll need to be specific about what type of proposal. Often what I will do when I'm making that request is I'll ask for the top 2 proposals submitted by an elementary school for a continuation grant. I want to get as close to what I need to review as possible. Now, with that said, you're not allowed to steal their text. It's just, it gives you some ideas of how other people answer those questions. Also, the proposals are quite different this year, but you'll still get, I think it's well worth the time, especially if you've never seen a grant before. And does that make sense? If you've not seen a grant before, it's kind of challenging to know what a grant should look like. So not a bad thing to do at all, in my view. Okay, so we are going to go back to where we were before, which is about the bears. So as we do the bears, I also want to try to show you a couple of ways of writing some of these harder to write objectives or performance indicators. How do you do that specifically when you have multiple things under them? I've got a couple of strategies I've used before. I'll try to show you a little bit of that. But first, we're going to just look at our bears. So I have my bears in the woods going on. I'm going to pull up, I think. Yeah, I'm going to pull up. I hope you can see on my screen now a copy of the 21st Century Logic Model. And we're going to just kind of play with that a little bit. I hope you can see it. It says it's red. So with the logic model, what we're looking at really, and I'm going to be rude and turn this way for a while. Again, we have the list of performance goals, and there are those 6 of them. Do you remember? We can see those in on page 42 of the RFA. You're going to have 1 for academic achievement, 1 for non-cognitive, 1 for meeting or increase the proposed numbers of students, 1 for increasing access to highly qualified, etc. Let's see. And it's hard to do 3 different objectives for some of those. Some of them is not hard at all. So, but for our exercise today, we're going to do what I have normally done, which is bears in the woods. Okay, so in bears in the woods, and I'm going to put up a little bit of the difference. I'm going to go to the end of the document. I think I am. There we go. All right. Well, I should really do it. I'm thinking, and I should never think in the middle of a training. I just shouldn't do that. Okay, go back here. I'm going to put that back over there. All right. For some reason, I am flying through the wrong slides. There we go. Go back slide. There we go. All right. So if I'm going to think about my participants, and that's really what I'm thinking about when I'm going to do my bears exercise. So I'm going to color this square yellow so that you guys can see that it is, that's where I'm working first, my little yellow area here. So I hope you can see this. If not, I don't know what to do except to tell you I am doing it. So as we look at as we look at our and think about the bears in the woods, we're going to pretend that we are the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, we have a problem. And that problem is that we have bears who are attacking people. So for us, our participants are sort of bears and people. So we're going to look at our data. Okay, so we have some data. And we have a column over here that says data sources used. Stop it. Okay. So what I'm going to look at first is I'm going to look at who are my participants. Well, for my purposes today, I'm going to talk about the need section here. Where did my cursor go? And so I'm going to do what I typically do when I do this exercise and talk about my bears and what the problem is there. And so what we found is that over the past 10 years, we've had an increasing number of bears who've attacked people. Well, that's not a good thing for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, so we need to do something about that. We need to have some activities. We need to have some resources. We need to target some specific areas or people to keep them safe. So what are we going to do? Well, first, we need to look at the problem. What is the problem? And when you're doing your needs section, this is where you're going to do your problem part. You're going to think about what is the specific problem, and then that will become your participants. Okay. Again, you're not going to serve every kid in your school. You're going to determine who you're serving. So for my purposes in teaching this exercise, we're doing bears at the Great Smoky Mountains Park. And we have learned that, let's see, this is, so in 2011, we had 42 bear attacks. In 2012, we had 56. In 2013, it stayed about the same. It was 59. In 2013, however, it went up a little bit to 78. I can get my fingers on the right keys. 2014 was 112. 2015 was 132. And right now, we are on, hang on a minute. Right now, we are on track in 2020 for 169 bear attacks. So that's our problem. And we're going to work with the people and the bears to solve this problem, right? So my goals then, I would have some goals. And a big broad goal for the park would be, gee, everybody's going to have a great time at the park. We're going to exist together, nature and man in harmony. Big goal. Might not be doable. But our main performance indicator, and here's how you write a performance indicator. My key problem with the bears is that I've had an increase in bear attacks. Therefore, my performance objective is to reverse it. I'm going to decrease the number of bear attacks. Hang on. So I'm going to decrease the number of bear attacks by, I don't know, let's say 35%. Over the next 2 years. That's it. Just wrote an indicator. Now, in a minute, I'll come back and do it for something else like math or literacy or whatever. But that's all an indicator is. Okay, that's all an objective is what is the problem and what does it look like when I've flipped it on its head, when I've changed it. Let's say, for the sake of argument, I'm making this. Let's say that I hate to use weight. People get sensitive. I get sensitive about weight. Let's say that I'm not moving enough. I'm in terrible shape. I am just sedentary. That's the word I'm looking for. So I'm sedentary. That means that I don't get up every day. Well, what do I do if I'm sedentary? I'm going to decrease the amount of sedentariness that I have, or make it more pretty, I'm going to increase the amount of my activity. I'm going to increase, and that's not going to be just activity. It's going to be miles walked, but also my lung capacity, my heart rate. I'm going to increase my wellness. And I'm going to define that. What does wellness look like, right? And I can define that and I can increase it. And so whatever is wrong, you flip it. And that's your indicator. Okay? So we've said here, for example, it's bear attacks. So now I'm going to do this a little bit. And here's why I wanted to show you this. Because we get all caught up. Let's see if I can find my chart again. There we go. We get all caught up in these tables and how they work. And tables are a pesky thing. So when I work in a table like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split these columns. So if you don't know how to do that, let's go do it. You go up to your layout at the top of your toolbar and you go into split cells. And I'm not going to do the columns. I don't want 12 columns. I want to keep 6 columns. But let's say I'm going to divide it into 4 rows. That's just a guess. All right, and there you go. I can leave the lines in or I can take the lines out, but this will help me keep everything straight. Okay, because when I describe an activity, I'm going to want to keep it linear to make it easier for my reader. So I'm going to make this a little prettier by moving things down here. I'm going to straighten this back up a little bit. And I'm going to come over here and say performance indicator. So my performance indicator is this. And I'm going to come right here and just paste it in the box. I'm going to decrease the number of bear attacks by 35% over 2 years. Ta-da! That wasn't hard. And literally, those go here. They're the same thing. So my resources, my activities, my participants. I know my participants is the bears and the people in the park. That may change. Watch how it goes. I don't like to start with the resources. It's harder. I start with activities. Okay. So what am I going to do? This would be where I asked you, if bears are attacking, why are they attacking? So go to the chart, to the chat. Go to your chat, and in the chat, tell me, why would a bear attack people? Why would a bear attack people? Okay, some of you have done this before. I'm expecting to see you put something. Lack of food. Maybe the people have food. So I'm going to just put a little thing under my indicators that says why. This won't stay here, but I'm going to do why. So food. They're hungry. I can't spell. Encroachment. Yes, encroachment. The people, we're all moving in on them, right? Trash left out. I have to fix my lines here. Okay, what about baby bears? Didn't want to do that. Right, protecting their cubs. You learned that in 3rd grade, right? They're going to protect those cubs. Okay, so now you see some of the why. So I'm going to stop there for our purposes today. So each of these whys has a fix. Okay, so why does Jonna need to lose 11%? Because Jonna likes Cheetos. How do you fix that? You get rid of the Cheetos. Okay. So let's look at our activities then. If I have a bear who's hungry, what do I do for a hungry bear? I feed the bears. And what does that mean? Well, it could mean that, let's see, let's do it this way. Let's put a couple of bullets under here. We're going to plant berry bushes. We're going to put trout in the river. Not the fiber, the river. Okay. You see how this is going? We just keep adding to this. So that's our activities. Now, that was for one set of activities. So feed the bears is a major activity. I underlined it. I'm actually going to bullet this. I don't like that bullet. That bullet takes up too much space. Let's go right there. All right. Okay, I'm going to take out my long, but you see how I'm doing that? I come up with the activity and then I just really define it better. Now, another one that we had up there was baby bears. So I'm going to put in there baby bears. So what do we do about that? Well, maybe we segregate the mamas and babies. And I don't mean mamas and babies. I mean separate the families from each other. Do you see how I'm doing that? I just go one at a time for my activities. Once I decide what I'm going to do, and I know why the bears are attacking people. So let's do math. Math? Pick a grade. Okay, let's do math. Let's do something easy because I'm bad at math. I'm not bad at math. I'm just, yeah, okay. Not the ma'ams. Segregate the mamas. All right, so let's say we're doing math. And we want to decrease the number who are at novice in math at 5th grade. I would also add here that was, which included 45% of students in 2020. I'm making that up. You know I'm making that up. Okay. But that's our objective, our performance indicator. So now what the heck am I going to do about that? Okay, well, what am I going to do? My activities for that are going to be something related to math. So in my activities, I'm going to say I am going to do intervention. And I don't know enough of math to be smart, so I'm going to say my intervention is going to be online games through Study Island. I'm just making that up. I'm going to add robotics to get them engaged in mathematics. I'm going to have them doing math games and whatever else I'm going to do, right? So I'm going to keep filling that in, everything that aligns to that. Then my resources are going to be the materials, the computer, robotics kits, math games, and a math teacher. Okay, so whatever it is, I'm just going to fill it in. That's all you're doing here. My targeted participants are going to be novice students. And I'm going to say that that's 45% of all 5th grade students, which is 36 of our anticipated regular attendees. I'm making it up. Again, you want to be as specific as you can there. What is the data that I'm going to use? I'm going to use a couple of sources of data here. I'm going to use the K-Prep. I'm also going to use the MAP assessment. Now, what are these pesky performance measures? They're the same things as the indicators, but they're simply later when you're in the grant, you'll fill that piece in, but it's the same thing. It's going to be math scores for participating students. You might also want to put in there, you could, if you wanted to put, because sometimes we call these our outcome measures, it could be how many kids you were serving in that, but really just filling that in a basic manner is fine. That column is something you'll be doing later. All right, so the resources are simply going to be what you're purchasing, the activities are what you're going to do, and you've described your goal there. Now, because someone asked me, I am going to put another couple column rows down here. I'm going to put you a couple of what I call complicated objectives or performance indicators. So pay attention or go get coffee. I'm good either way. So let's say that we had an objective performance indicator for, I'm going to say, trying to think what I want to say. So let's say it's in high school, because that was the question. So in high school, and we're gonna have improvements. We're gonna increase the number of participating high school students who meet academic standards for math, reading, and science. Okay. By. You know, in the sentence with by, I'm making this up on the fly. Didn't mean to rhyme that, but I did. So let me go up here and get this looking better. I want that. Oh, that doesn't want it. Nope. Nope. Stop that. Am I making you dizzy? I just made me dizzy. There we go. Okay. So I got my little circly thing there. Not exactly what I wanted, but I'll go with it. Let's see if it'll let me change to that. Yes. Okay. So what am I going to do first? By. We're going to increase the number of students participating high school students who meet academic standards for math learners. That's kind of a big thing. So we could do, this is what you don't want to do when you're, okay, this could all be about K-Prep. By
Donna,
I'm hearing sniffing. Yes, ma'am.
you know, you could also do a performance indicator for math, reading, and science.
Oh, I know. I could do 3 separate. Yes, absolutely. That's what I just realized when I was going, So let's do it that way. Because the question was different. So I'm going to do this one's math, and there's one of them. By 35% over 2 years. Now, what if I had more than one thing happening under math? Okay, I'm increasing the number of high school students, right? So what if I had more than one thing happening with math? What if I also had an algebra thing happening? I'm going to decrease the number of participating high school students who are retained in Algebra 1 in 9th grade. And I'm going to say annually by 15%. Okay, so I'm still talking about math, right? I could have several indicators for academics depending on what I had and what I wanted to do. And that's what you're supposed to do. So it shouldn't be limited to 3 if you can do 4 or 5, if they're good and if they make sense. Okay, now I want to show you another way to do it. That over there. So I could say I'm going to improve math at the high school level among participants by. That's what I was trying to get to. And then here you would say by decreasing the number of students at novice in all grades in math, increasing, I know I got line problems, increasing the number of students who complete Algebra 1 by the end of the 9th grade. And forgive my typos. Do you see how I'm doing that though? I'm kind of layering. I gave you one objective for making math better, but I'm giving you some ways of measuring it. Okay, so that makes it a little more compact than having 43 of them. But you want to have at least one for math, at least one for science, at least one for reading. I'm not sure I helped at all, but okay. I will tell you there is no one right way to do objectives. There are preferred ways, but not a right way. Everybody does their performance indicators a little differently. So that's what I got right now. Let's see if I can keep answering questions, okay? So again, looking at your logic model, you're looking at your objectives, your performance measures on the left. What are the resources? I happen to fill in the activities first. What are we going to do about that? And then I fill in the resources. Who's going to get those services? So let me give you another example. Let's say in our non-cognitive indicators, we have behavior issues. We have kids who have more than 3 or 3 to 5 behavioral reports on them by the end of the previous year. So we target them for some additional team building non-cognitive activities. So our performance indicator is to decrease the number of behavioral incidents for our targeted 5th graders. Our activities could be team building exercises, leadership activities, basketball. Our resources could be all those things to do that. But our targeted participants are going to be the 35 identified students who are being recruited to the program and who have additional or lots and lots of behavioral issues. Okay, not every kid in the school. We're going to target those to make those improvements. Now, Johnny is also going to play basketball, but Johnny has not been identified as a behavioral risk. That's okay. You need enough kids on the team. Okay? But we're going to be accountable for these objectives, and we're doing this particular strategy. We're providing these resources to redirect students who need the redirection. Okay? So it's a theme. All right. Thought I heard Bridget wanting to say something, so I was going to let her.
No, you're good.
Okay. All right. So I want you to take a second to do that, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you something better than me trying to do this on a fly. This is from a winning proposal, and you'll notice how they kept it all together. I think what happens is once we get in these tables, everything runs amok. So when you put in a line to keep everything together, I think it really helps, and it's perfectly allowable. So what they did over on the left-hand side, they put a couple of their indicators. They put their resources, their activities. Targeted students, notice that it's not everybody. It's all the students below proficiency in math and reading and their other regularly attending students. Okay, but they're targeting the data sources they'll use and then their performance measures, which is basically who they tested. Okay. So again, filling out the first top of the box of that chart, getting your goals put in there, then figuring out at least 3 objectives using increase or decrease. Okay. What is wrong with your literacy, math, and science? Writing those out. That's the way you fill in this chart. Some of these are harder than others. For example, what do you measure with your families? I don't know. What are some of the challenges of your families? Can all of them read? Do they have a GED? Are they, I don't know. Do they need jobs? Are they trying to help their kids with homework? Have you identified elementary math skills as a big issue for families trying to help their kids with homework? Have you tried to help your kids with homework lately? Okay, so what is it that your families need? And then you increase those skills. That's how you write those objectives. And you measure it through surveys or through academic. You could do a pre or post test. Okay. Give them a math quiz before they start the math work. Give them a math quiz at the end of the math work. I bet it improved. Okay, so there are lots of things you can do but you have to sit down and think it through. What do your families need? What are you going to provide them in those skill building resources? And how does that make improvement? Okay. And you don't have to have every skill building activity available. It's an overall measure. All right. I'm not sure I did that well, but there you go. That's what I've got for the day. It's after lunch on a Monday. So here we go, looking at, so keep going back to the one I just showed you, the one, that's a good one to look at, okay? It's a very good one to look at. Very well done. All right, so let's talk about the budget. Let's see how badly I can do on the budget, right? And guess what? We are close to being done for the day, but not that close. So keep your questions coming. I am happy to answer questions as I go through. Okay, hey, they've got a new address in there for asking for those proposals. Okay. Also, Bridget has a strategy in there about how to complete your form. If you can retain your emails, letters, and a phone log internally to support any forms with electronic signatures. You can just make a note of that. Okay. All righty, so creating the budget. Well, your project creates that, right? I'm going to go back a slide to show you. So on our slide with our logic model, we have all these things we're going to do: homework, activity, assistance, academic tutoring, etc. And then we listed the resources. Those resources should show up somewhere in your narrative and in particular in your budget. What are you paying for? Or what do you already have at your school to address these issues in the after school? All right. So your proposal should be aligned to that. This should not go back. This should not be new stuff for you. If you need to do something, you figure out what you need to do it, the resources you need. It should demonstrate the components of your plan, like field trips, like professional development. If you've listed it as an activity, it should end up somewhere, right? And also, if it's a requirement, it should help. Now, before I go to the example, I want to tell you one of the key ways that I keep up with all of the money, and it's really simple. When I'm doing this work, no matter what I'm doing, if I'm sitting where you are, listening to someone rant and rave like me, and somebody says something that's going to cost me money, like professional development and travel, I'm going to put a big old red dollar sign in the margin. Okay. And so then as I'm sitting down working and I'm beginning to work on my budget, I'm going to have dollar signs everywhere. And I can start adding those in. That way I don't forget something. Okay. Sometimes we forget that we have to pay mileage when people go out of the district or to a training or something. So don't forget those things. But as you build a budget, you're basically making a shopping list. So I'm using the supplies category and I'm trying to provide some details. So rather than just saying, we're going to buy supplies and those supplies are going to cost us $835. Well, you can certainly do that in your form. But if you do that in the form, then you don't get the detail. And you really need the detail. Because, for example, if I said we're going to spend $5,610 on supplies, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. What is it? And especially if I had, I don't know, a couple of $1,000s listed in travel, whew, talk about a red flag. Somebody's going to say something about that. So you want to, and you get credit for having a detailed budget. Okay, not just putting some numbers in, but putting the math in. But wait, Jonna, I don't know how many engineering kits I need. Figure it out. Okay? Because, you know, again, I'm going to say this, I said it earlier, this is not your money. This is federal money that comes to the Kentucky Department of Education, to the 21st Century Program to help you with your kids after school. You should know your students well enough to sit down around a table and say, okay, we have 600 kids in our elementary school. How many of them are going to come to the after school program? 100? 150, 45. Figure that out first. Then figure out which of your students need the intervention. Okay, because when Susie and Billy are in reading intervention, they're not going to be over here doing something else. How many kids are you going to target in each of these things? So if you had 75 kids in your program, you don't need 75 engineering kits because they're not all going to be doing engineering at the same time. You have to make a good estimate for that. You don't need 75 Chromebooks. And in fact, what I'll tell you is if you could put a couple of Chromebooks in there, but you're going to get you're going to have a discussion with KDE before you get that award. I'm not saying don't do Chromebooks. I'm saying be thoughtful. Be thoughtful about how many you need. If you put 10 or 12 in there, it's probably going to be a red flag. Just saying. I'm always cautious with that. Now, what do you do about the in-kind? And what do I mean about the in-kind? What the heck is in-kind? Okay, so here's where I want to tell you a hard truth about grants. No grant ever pays for everything. A grant is a coupon. Okay? A grant is a coupon. It is money to pay for some big batch of work that you want to do, that you need to do for your students. I tell this story because it's the easiest one for people to really grasp. I tell it every year. I was working on a Read to Achieve grant with a new teacher, and she was the interventionist. She'd been with the school for 3 years, and now she was having to write this grant to basically keep her job. Shame on this, but you know, the things happen. Okay. So she says, well, at least the budget's easy. The budget's simple. It's my salary. I said, okay. I said, that's fine, because that grant required that you hire a quality teacher, and the grant was limited to $40,000. And as you know, even in Kentucky, a teacher is worth $40,000, high quality. So I said, yes, but we'll use your fringe benefits and your materials and stuff as your in-kind. And she said, oh, no. My principal was really clear. We're only doing my salary. I said, no, I agree. The grant will pay for your salary, but the school district will pay for your fringe benefits, for your health care, for your retirement. And she was adamant, no. I've been told only myself. We finally went down the hall and had a conversation with the principal, who, of course, it was just a communication thing. He was like, oh, of course, we have to pay that. It's a law. You know, we can't just not pay that. So a grant is a coupon. And in her case, her grant ended up being an $80,000 program that had a coupon for $40,000, and the district contributed $40,000 as well in terms of fringe benefits, supplies, software, books, manipulatives, on and on and on. There are very few grants that pay for everything. A grant is a coupon. So what we want you to do is to help you capture those other amounts. Okay, so I want to think about that for a minute with you, and that's what your partners, your co-applicant, your school are bringing to the party. So let's take a look again at your RFA. Okay, we want to go first to page 48. Okay, we're looking in the criteria again. So in the criteria, page 48 for the budget. Okay, let's see. You're listing the fiscal resources the agency has to cover initial startup and operating costs. Also, the next section talks about sustainability. Well, your matching funds help, they kind of hint at the fact that you could sustain if you needed to, right? You have those extra funds. I also want to turn over to page 61. Turn to page 61 with me. And this is the budget summary form. And the budget summary form basically has these year 1, year 2, year 3 columns, right? So year 1, year 2, year 3, and you'll see there that it has an amount of money requested And then there's amount of in kind. Now, in kind is not required. Okay, I'm going to say that again. In kind is not required. However, every grant I've ever been involved with has some kind of in kind. So you might as well take advantage of it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to whip this over to my shared screen. All right, so I'm hoping you are seeing a Word document with the budget form in it. Do you see the budget form? Scream at me if you don't. But here's where it says in kind, right? And it has it these three places, in kind. It's hard to do that this way. There we go. All right. Now, you can just put a number in there, but here's what I'll tell you. If you put in there school personnel in kind, $10,000, I'm not going to believe you. Unless on the next page, you put in something that's in kind on this page. But Jonna, there's not a column there. It just says amount requested. I see. It is a little problematic, but it's also very doable. Let me show you my next slide. All right, so in kind example, the same thing that we did before, $5,610 for materials and resources, but you know, nobody really wants to pay for art materials, so we're going to do those in kind. How did I do that? I did my in kind in italics and put my my amount not in the far right column, but over a little bit. Now I have some evidence of how I'm going to spend that in kind. All right, so I'm going to go back over to our form right here. And if I was doing this on the screen right now, and I was having my salary, I would put in here my site coordinator. I'm going to say full-time equivalent at, I'm going to say it's $35,000 a year. And I'm going to put more in there. I'm going to put, it's not going to be bold either. I'm going to put more. I'm going to write something. Who knows? But then I'm going to come down here and I might do it this way. I might do in kind. And then write, let's think about this. Oh, okay. Food services coordinator. At 12 hours per week times $15 per hour. Okay. And then I'm going to give it a total of whatever that is. Okay, you see how I did that? Now, whenever I add all that up, I can put it back over in that other page, and I have evidence of how I did it. Now, you also submit these on paper, which means if I wanted to, I could make my in kind red because I'm going to print it. Okay. So, I mean, there are a lot of things you can do. I really like breaking this into two sections. For my regular, which is going to end up, I'm going to put that up here in this amount requested. I'll go ahead and put 35,000 here. And then I have my other amount in my in kind, and I just transfer it over into the big chart. Now, I can feel eyeballs rolling back in people's head. Oh, Jonna, that I can't get, that's numbers. I can't get my head around that. Oh, Jonna, that's just too much yuck to deal with. Oh, please. No, it's not. So let's do a quick activity that may give us a little bit of waking up here. Okay. So this is one of my favorite activities. Now, I've only done it a few times because I just thought of it last year. Okay. So we're going to do it real quick, and we're going to use the chat in a minute. Get a piece of paper and a pencil out first. Here's your scenario. It's almost Thanksgiving. I almost changed it to July 4th because we really don't know what we're doing at Thanksgiving. But let's pretend we're having a socially distanced Thanksgiving outside. It's going to be nice. It's going to be in the 50s and 60s. So you just learned that the family celebration will be at your house and you're expecting 18 people. You also have been relegated to a budget of $100. I have hosted many a Thanksgiving dinner, and I can guarantee you it is well over $100. So now you have to figure out how to do that. So what I want you to do is take 1 minute and jot down all of the things you need for Thanksgiving Day. Okay? Just jot down some things you need. The easy one, the turkey. Okay? Jot them down, and then I'll give you another instruction. Just a quick list. And don't forget, you need to include all the costs. If you're buying paper plates, if you're whatever they are, what are those costs going to be? Give you a minute. I'll check the questions while you do that. All right. So I'm hoping you all have a few little things on your list. We are still thinking about ours. We're one of those families that hunkers down. So we're still thinking about what we're going to do. But I feel some dressing, some turkey, maybe a ham in the near future. It may be just for me and my husband, but that's okay. And sweet potatoes and macaroni and cheese and all those things. So I've got all that stuff figured out. Now in the chat, here's what I want you to think about. In the chat, which of those things or items could be in kind and how? That is, they do not cost you anything in your $100 budget. How do you get those things for no cost? I put you to sleep, didn't I? Oh, plates, glasses, tables, decorated. Yes, you have them from last year. Different families could bring all the side dishes. Absolutely. You could assign people to bring desserts and all that stuff, right? What about the turkey? Have my husband go shoot one. Yes. And some businesses give you the turkey, right? There's a $35, $40 savings right there. That's in kind. It's a coupon. It is not hard to figure out in your school district who's bringing in kind every day. Make tea instead of buying it. You know, that, amen. You can make tea for 50 cents. I don't know why we buy tea. I don't know. Fresh turkey out of our backyard. Excellent. Use what I have on hand. There's another good one. Don't overdo. My husband's over here now and he's probably laughing. Okay. So you get the point, right? We have a lot of things in our lives where we make do, we bring in some in-kind, we get a partnership, we do it somehow. You could enter a radio contest every day to win that turkey, right? So whatever it is you need to do, you're going to meet your budget in part through in-kind. So excellent, excellent. That's the way I think when I'm doing in-kind for my projects. You're going to have folks, and here's another example. You're going to have an advisory council that meets with you. It's in the RFA. You're going to have, they're going to be part of your stakeholders. That's going to include the principal. It's going to include folks out of your district. It's going to include all kinds of people. Those people cost something. They're not free. They're donating their time to the project. That's in kind. You're also going to have some of the supplies donated by the school. You're going to have, oh, I don't know, teacher time when you go in for a teacher meeting. There are so many things that are donated just at the school building. then also you're going to go out to partners and they're going to give you things like pizza. They're going to give you things like hats and notebooks and t-shirts and all kinds of things, admissions to different things that are going to be part of your in-kind. So think about those. It will give your reader confidence that you will be able to sustain and operate your program. It is a very important piece as we begin wrapping up. All right, so meeting your deadline. I got a couple of things to say about this that are really particular to this year. You have two big things happening, at least right now, maybe three if you count the literacy grant that's also out there. Please remember when you sit down with your calendar this week and you begin to think about, okay, how much of this do I have to have done? The grant must be in KDE's hands by December 10th at 4 p.m. Start there and back it out. Don't tell people it's due December 10th, because you know what they'll do. They'll hear you and they'll start thinking, oh, it's due in mid-December. I don't have to. No. People who are helping you with this grant project, people who are in your team, people who are getting you data or signatures, tell them it's due December 1st. Give yourself some extra space. Keep a list of all the people who say they're doing things for you and send them reminders. And I often include everybody on those emails so we can see who's missed their assignment, right? I'm not very nice when it comes down to it. In addition to the literacy grant coming out and also being due the week after this grant, you also have Thanksgiving that we just mentioned coming up. You know, and I know, not a whole lot of learning and helping goes on those 2 or 3 days in the middle of November, right? It's just like Christmas week. Nothing happens in school. So be careful of that. You may lose some time because of Thanksgiving. On the other hand, I have used grant deadlines to get out of washing the dishes for Thanksgiving. Just a thought. Okay. Also, the other thing I want you to remember is COVID. We started our conversation by saying we ain't going to talk about COVID, right? And here I am ending with COVID. But not because of what you want to put in your grant, but what happens if your school district shuts down between now and December 10th? And we all know that's quite possible, right? You need a plan for what you're going to do and how or whether it can be done in the middle of this. Now, I can't say for sure what KDE will do in terms of the deadline if schools are shutting down. I will tell you, however, that I was involved in more than one grant competition last spring when we were in the middle of we have no idea what, and they continue. One of the grants got a couple of extra weeks, but it pushed right on forward. So you can't count on 21st Century closing the door on the competition. You have to plan now for how you're going to do this grant or whether you'll do this grant if your district shuts down between now and the date that it's due. Okay, plan.
Yes.
Know who's going to do what. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And I was just going to say that if you know that you're not going to be working at school or if you're in the district office, at the district office, make sure you have all the resources you need at home to support writing the grant.
Very, very good point. You know, my one of my grandsons graduated middle school, and so yes, he was one of those kids who, you know, somebody cleaned out his locker for him, right? And picked up a garbage bag full of his stuff. So plan ahead. Know what you're going to need. And you don't know between the Wednesday night when you go home and the Thursday morning whether you're going back. You might need to really plan ahead. Okay. Make sure it's backed up into Google or on Dropbox or somewhere so you can work from anywhere. And then I'm going to check the questions again. So shoot some more in there. Just another one of my favorite procrastination projects. This is totally me, except for the beard. Sharp pencils, clean paper, good light, comfortable chair. Maybe the room's too warm. Maybe I don't need to start yet. So nothing's ever perfect when you write grants. You have to just do it. You have to jump in and do it. And as I told you earlier, I get those evaluation criteria and I just start sketching it out. Mrs. Waters in the 11th grade told me I would outline stuff every day. She was right. And so that outline will help you get started and help you know what you need to be thinking through. That and the logic model. All right, so more questions can come to the KDE email. I'm going to flip over and see if we've got anything pending out there. Nope, we're still talking about Thanksgiving. Okay, any other questions for us?
Jonna, let me just make a couple of quick comments before everybody goes. One thing we've noticed in the past with applications or during the reviewers training is that if there is a district or a CBO that is writing for more than one grant, we have seen applications where they have written for a high school grant and an elementary grant, and in the elementary grant, it lists the high school, or in the high school grant, it has the same budget as the elementary grant. So I know that, copy and pasting, please watch when you're doing that and make sure you have the correct information in each of your applications. So there was something else I had on the tip of my tongue. I can't think. Oh, make sure you work with the principals of the school, get feedback and input from them. A lot of times when we've had during our award site visits, we'll have a principal say that, we don't use that program in our school. Can I do a budget amendment and, purchase what we use? So it's very important to make sure you're communicating with the school. We've also had some CBOs in the past that wrote a grant to serve ABC Elementary, and the district also wrote the grant to serve ABC Elementary. So you need to make sure you're communicating.
So Sylvia has asked, does anyone know of a directory of homeschools that they could share? And Sylvia, I would say that I think that the district knows the names of students who are homeschooled. Somebody at the office knows that. Now the homeschool co-ops, you may check on the KDE website where the private schools are listed. That may be one way. The other way would be just to start asking around. I know at my church, we have tons of kids who play basketball, and those folks all know each other. And so one of those parents could maybe help you with that. I know that doesn't help too much. The DPP has a notification. Perfect.
DPP, yes.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Also the Title I coordinator in the districts.
Yep. Yeah, it's so funny that we never know, if we don't deal with that piece, we just don't have a clue. Is that something we know? Yeah. There's also a website with the private schools listed. KDE has that. So that's a quick way to check before going way down into the weeds. Now, again, it's our hope that all the questions that were asked today will end up in the frequently asked questions document. Some will be merged, of course. So also keep asking questions. Email those to the KDE email address.
Yes, you have until November 16th to get any other questions in to the KDE RFP email box. 12 noon Eastern time.
Yep. All right. Anything else we can help you with today?
And just a quick reminder that the questions that we've responded to here today will also be in our FAQ when that is posted.
All right, Bridget, do you think we're ready to call it a day?
I think we are. I do want to say, I know earlier someone had asked a question about how many awards will be granted. We don't know that right now. I do not know how much funding we have at this time, but I do know that, an application may score the minimum points to be awarded, but once we start using the funding to award grants, we may run out of funding before we get to your grant. So that's just some information about that.
Yep. So it's always from the top down. So the highest scoring until they run out. That's the way they do it. And Carolyn asks, will the video be posted? It will, but it may be a little bit. It usually takes them a few days to get this posted, but it will be, it should be posted, yes. All right then. If Bridget's okay, I'm gonna say we're done.
I'm good, Jonna. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone that participated.
All right. Best of luck. Remember, be prepared in case something happens, and otherwise, focus on your kids. That's the best thing we can tell you. So thank you again, and ask questions as you need to through next week or to next week. Thanks so much, guys.